help me out. Joining us, Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt, former Attorney General of that great state. Senator Schmitt, this is just a weird story, okay? The whole thing is a photo op. I understand that. China is buying oil from Russia and Iran, thereby financing war against the United States. But then comes this other announcement, John Kerry at the negotiating table. The State Department says we're going to have a new era of climate cooperation. And then China says, well, we're going to build 300 new coal-fired power plants. I have nothing against coal-fired power plants. I'm just saying, isn't it a little ironic, Senator, that they're going along this route? I mean, if that isn't appeasing China, what is?
That's exactly right, Larry, and it's more than that. It's embarrassing, and it's terrible for the United States of America to try to continue to chase China to do something they've refused to do. They've not lived up to any of these sorts of agreements before, even if you accept the premise that somehow human beings have an outsized role in controlling the weather. Even if you accepted that premise, right? China's not done anything. They're building all these coal-fired plants. They have emissions twice that of the United States, yet we're doing a couple things. One is we're declaring war on domestic energy production. We're not energy independent. We should be. We should be exporting that to our friends and allies around the globe. That provides a lot of strength and independence. But we're becoming overly reliant on China for all these supply chains, including critical minerals and other materials that you need for this EV push that Americans don't want to buy, that you're losing money and you're punishing American workers. I grew up in a blue-collar town, Larry, and the middle class has been hollowed out for decades. This is accelerating all of it, all again, to push this climate alarmist agenda. And by the way, Larry, the Biden administration is already doing this anyway. Like, they're totally disengaging. They're trying to ask China to play along. China's not going to do it. We have a huge trade deficit with this country, with China, our chief adversary, and they're using that money to build up their military. They're building up islands in the South China Sea. They are stealing our technology, and not just for cheap televisions, but for, like, weapons of destruction. And we've got to start to take them seriously. This is another terrible move by Joe Biden, and it's embarrassing. And, of course, China's purchase of oil imports from Russia and Iran are financing war against the United States. I mean, just that simple. You know, this whole fossil fuel thing has been misplayed. So I know it's one of your favorites. I want to play a clip a few months back from Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm. Here's what she says about the China story.
I think China has been very sensitive and has actually invested a lot in their solutions to achieve their goals. So we're hopeful that, you know, we can all learn from what China is doing.
Maybe, you know, Senator Schmitt, maybe you turned her. And she says, I mean, maybe she said, we're going to build coal plants just like China. The war on fossil fuels is over. The Green New Deal is finally over. And by the way, there's another article today, you may have seen it, give the Daily Caller credit. The idea of damages and monetary losses from climate change is completely bogus, completely phony, doesn't factor in population and wealth increases. It's been disproven. This is another one of these, you know, Bidenomic Green New Deal things that is simply not the case.
That's right, and I had Secretary Granholm in that committee asking her these questions like, China's not doing any of this stuff you want them to do. Well, we hope that they will, but they're not, right? And the people that suffer are Americans. We pay higher prices for everything. We're overly reliant on China. There's no question about that. They're just not interested in doing any of these things. And we're in a real-world competition. When they write the history books, Larry, of the 21st century, who prevails, China or the United States? And it's a rival like we've never had before, because it's not just, we had a military rival with the Soviet Union. They were nuclear power. They weren't an economic rival. And we have all of that with China. And they come in and they're playing Joe Biden for a fool here, acting like they're going to do something on climate, whatever definitions you want to have for that. Meanwhile, our government right now, Larry, in another hearing, I'm on the Commerce Committee, asked the secretary there, we need to deploy broadband to our rural communities, right? We need to be competitive. There's a bunch of things. There's money to go do that. But the burdensome regulations now, you have to fill out the application to able to lay that broadband of what you're going to do to address climate injustice. How about we just lay the broadband? Let's lay the wire and figure this stuff out. But again, these are the hurdles. And again, this obsession they have with this agenda that really hurts America.
By the way, on that point, Senator, you know, you may not know, when I was in the Trump administration, I had the accounts for high-speed broadband and so forth. they are promulgating the FCC regulations on diversity, equity, and inclusion are unbelievable. I mean, not only do they want to return to all these internet controls so you can't make a buck, internet providers can't make any money, these incredible diversity, equity, inclusion regulations, they're going to stop out this whole industry, okay?
Larry,
5G will never, 5G will, 6G, 7G will never materialize in this country because of these onerous regulations.
And that's part of our national security. We have to have economic security. That's part of our national security. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has recent, Ivy League graduates who majored in gender studies writing these regulations that have huge impacts for the economy. I filed a bill just this week, Larry, to abolish all of these DEI positions. This is incredibly divisive. It's dividing our workforce against one another. It's this race essentialism that divides people by oppressor and oppressed. And by the way, has something to do with what you're seeing playing out on the streets right now. All of this stuff is very connected. And the Biden administration, again, is part of this movement. These radicals have taken over that administration. They're, sort of rejects from the Obama administration. And here we are. And we're dealing with this great powers competition with China. And we're talking about, DEI administrators and environmental justice grant applications. I mean, China is hell-bent on world domination, and Joe Biden is fiddling here while it's burning.
Yeah, he won't acknowledge it. You're dead right, sir. I mean, that's the point I've made. He will not acknowledge it. It's the elephant in the living room. Americans know, though. They're very smart. That's what his polls show. So it's time for a change. But let's just spread 5G. 5G. Just get it done and stop all these regulatory obstacles. Senator Eric Schmitt from the great state of Missouri. Thank you, sir. You're terrific. We appreciate it very much.
Great to be with you, Larry.
You bet.